Hello and welcome to the results stream of Special Round 0 Elepentary tiling of the 2026 SpaceChem tournament. This puzzle is about getting a stream of pentominoes and turning them into p-decominos, which look like this, using only bond plus and sense. So this is what a reactor looks like. Has 16 bonders and 1 sensor, and you are only really allowed to use bond plus, not bond minus, despite the bonders having the capability, because the metric is basically symbols, but it punishes bond minuses with a factor of 10,000. So you really don't want to use those, and there's a minor punishment for grab drops and a tiebreaker of cycles. The way this works is that this input stream contains some kind of pentominoes, like a p pentomino and a v pentomino. And if you always handle them in pairs, you are guaranteed to be able to turn them into a p decomino using only bond plus. And there are 7 such pairs, which will appear like in any order, both within the pair, and also these pairs are then just repeating randomly, not really in any kind of bucket system or anything like that. Just the first 14 inputs contain all 7 possible pairs, so that players who could handle the first 7 inputs could be reasonably confident that they can handle all of the inputs. Yeah. So I chose this p-decomino because first of all, I wanted to make a level about building something out of pentominoes, which is partially inspired by playing the game Artisan of Glimmer, which is about separating regions into shapes and other things. And there are many levels about doing things with pentominoes, and after doing that for a long time, I wanted to do something with that in SpaceChem. And so I thought putting two pentominoes together might be a nice level. And this is pretty much the best shape you can make out of various pentominoes if you only have 2 of them. So I programmatically checked what is the best shape that can be separated into pentominoes in many ways, and yeah, this was the best. Can be made out of 2 pentominoes in 7 ways, or even 14 ways if you have mirror images of the inputs also. But I decided not to include the mirror images of all of these inputs. Yeah, and the second best would be a 3x3 with 1 extra atom connected right here, so at a middle thing, not at a corner point. And I think that can be decomposed into pentominoes in 6 ways, if I remember correctly, but might also be 5. I'm not quite sure anymore. Yeah, so that's how I came up with this, and then I didn't come up with a full plan of how to solve it, but I did see that 5 out of the 7 possible pairs contain a p-pentomino, and you can kind of filter out the p-pentomino and then just put the other one somewhere around it to make a p-decomino. And then you only need to handle 2 other cases. I don't think I initially even realized that the other 2 cases both contain a u-pentomino, but that is something that I think all of the participants noticed, that each pair contains a p-pentomino or a u-pentomino, and you can use that in your solution in some way. So that's enough of an explanation about the level. I think it's time to see some solutions now. First one is by Anning May, and it is called Pantyhose. So continuing the trend of a pun such as in the title of this level, which is called Elepentary tiling. And this one uses only 3 reactors, despite you being allowed to use 12 reactors. But of course, it is a symbols optimization puzzle, so if you can get away with fewer reactors, you don't really want to have extra reactors. The first reactor is a single Waldo reactor. I like to see that. And it separates the P and U pentominoes from the rest, and actually also takes the V pentomino, I think, right here, and already bonds it together with a P pentomino and outputs everything else there in those arrangements. So let's have a look at how that works. So after some flip-flop priming, there's a grab here, which I believe grabs the P, U, and maybe V pentominoes. I don't quite remember. We can see that. Definitely the P and the U. So the P pentomino gets placed right there, just like the annotation says. And then it just uses blind grabs here to grab in different places. Next, there is a V pentomino, which also gets grabbed right there, so I was right on that one. And then it has the sensor to detect the V pentomino and not crash into the P pentomino right there. Rotate it around, and instead of outputting it at the top with all of the other pentominoes that are not P and U, it already bonds it to the P pentomino down there and outputs that. Yeah, next there's a T pentomino, which does not go down here, but instead gets rotated once and then placed right here. And the corresponding P pentomino goes down there.
So P and U do not form a pair. So it's not possible for the P or the U pentomino that is stuck in the output area to collide with the next one that red is going to be carrying now.
Yeah. So pretty much always one molecule goes to the top and one goes to the bottom, unless the pair contains specifically a V pentomino together with a P pentomino, and the V pentomino has its special path right here, which goes around the P pentomino if that's already there. And this grab drop is used to position the U pentomino in a slightly different spot than where it would drop just the P pentomino to actually be able to output that. Okay, and then there's some special handling here. Let's see what that is for. That is for the mirrored L pentomino, which gets grabbed like that and then placed over there. And that's only for the L pentomino. Okay. So yeah, this first reactor mostly does the sorting.
Does it matter if you go up on J2 versus H2?
J2 versus H2. No. Apparently not. So that arrow could also be there and make it slightly faster. Okay. And then the pipes do some crisscross action here, but end up with the same orientation again and go to the second reactor, which basically assembles the P decominos, but might be missing a few bonds. It's down there. So we can put a pause right here. At first, it already inputs this almost completed P decomino that is just missing a few bonds. So it brings it over there, uses these 4 bonders to bond it, and then drops it outputs. And next, it's not a full decomino yet, so the sensor does not sense anything up there, and it inputs something else instead. Then it places the P pentomino down there, the T up there, and those get brought together, but not bonded, but just output in this location where they can then be bonded easily. So that is one of these 3 cases. Then next, if there's a U pentomino, it lands right there. The F pentomino up there lines up perfectly to get bonded, and its output right there. So these bonders handle the case when there is a U pentomino at the bottom, together with either an F or a Y. And everything else with a P pentomino ends up at the bottom and does not get bonded yet. So here's the same thing. The Y gets placed there. U gets bonded to it, and it outputs. And then for the P pentomino, yeah, the red Waldo does not grab it right here. So nothing ends up in the top output zone, and instead it gets put down there. Now actually, let's put a sync over, not a sync, a pause over there now. So we have this case, the 2 cases with the U's. And then this. And in this case, with the Y pentomino up there, this blue sensor actually detects that and places the P one further to the left. So this lines up like that, because the Y is too wide to have it over to the right and have the 3x3 in this location.
Does it matter if the J4 arrow is on J4 as opposed to I4?
No, it does not. So you can save even more cycles right here. Okay.
I think it's all limited by the first reactor.
Yeah. And then we have the third reactor, which is pretty simple. Let's just move this right there. So at the bottom there we have a p pentomino and something on top of it. And here at the top, there is just something that is already fully bonded and just gets moved to the output zone. So just input, grab, drop, output. Not sure why that's not there, but whatever. We don't really need to look at the red Waldo there. And the blue creates a bond there. And then creates these bonds using all of these bonders. So for these three cases, it just goes over here. And then for this bottom case, it detects with the sensor that it's a different case and it needs bonds in different places and uses all of these bonders to get those bonds. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward. Let's get this back to how it was. And then we can see it run like that. Also, one thing I haven't mentioned yet, there are exactly enough inputs to create the outputs. So at the end, you will not have any more molecules flying around and you're not allowed to create any waste. Yeah, this has 94 symbols, 3 reactors, and takes around 5,000 cycles. Let's have a look at how we can improve on that. With Team Absolute Zero's solution, sort the U&P version 18.1. Okay, also Prokius wrote that this stream is going to be confusing because he referred to pentominos in different ways. I mean, I gave them all an official name, which you can see right here. So it's your own fault for not following this naming convention. But calling the V pentomino an L pentomino is usually not great because the mirror of this should be called L pentomino. Yeah, anyway. Team Absolute Zero with sort the U&P version 18.1. They use 4 reactors, but fewer symbols in those 4 reactors. The first one again is a single Waldo reactor. And they also wrote a lot of text on their reactors. Let me just see if there's anything relevant in there. I think mostly for reactors 3 and 4. So this reactor filters out the P and U pentominos from the other pentominos, places them in those 2 places, and places all the other pentominos in some not annotated places. So yeah, it uses this place to grab the P and U pentominos, which also grabs the V pentomino, I think. Yeah, right here it also grabs the V pentomino, but that does not have any why am I getting Steam notifications? Now I shouldn't get any ones anymore. I had the setting in the wrong thing. Great. So everything that reaches this point is a V, P, or U pentomino, and the U and P pentomino have a second atom on top, which gets detected by the sensor, but the V pentomino doesn't. So this one goes straight down. Everything gets rotated once and then moves to the right here.
Amazingly, it appears that the 1 cycle delay in this reactor is necessary.
Yeah, there's something in the notes about that. And we can just have a look at the bigger picture here and then go through the details in the notes. Also, Team Absolute Zero, I did not mention, is Rex Cakes, Gigigol, and Sarkyle. Okay, so yeah, this reactor is rather straightforward. And the second one actually gets the two inputs swapped around. Okay, red is just going back and forth here, blindly grabbing. And meanwhile, blue is trying to input in both input zones. So let's wait for that to happen. It's timed in such a way that red grabs this out of the way before blue gets to it. No, that was wrong. It's just sitting there and blue doesn't even have a chance to grab it. So red then grabs it later, moves the P pentomino to the right, and places it over there, which triggers the sensor, causing it to go up there and also grab the V pentomino and bring it over there. And the next time the same happens, and red just moves everything to the lower output zone here. Now when there's a U pentomino and not a P pentomino, blue grabs it and just moves it out of the way right before red could accidentally grab this here. So that's why the timing is very important with the previous reactor. Creates those bonds and it later creates the other two bonds. So that's how it handles the cases with U pentominoes. And everything else just gets moved to the bottom. Okay, we've seen everything here. So let's move on to the next reactor, which actually only gets this bottom output. And this one is a bit more tricky, so let's put a pause right here. When it eventually inputs something, that is a P pentomino right there. These flip-flops cause the red Waldo to go down into these two different columns, almost in an alternating way, but in a way that when the Waldo comes from the left, it always goes down on the right. And actually, I think it goes down on the right 4 times and on the left 3 times before all the flip-flops reset. So the P pentomino gets moved down there. And then it blindly grabs over there next. Then for the next input, it first of all tries to grab there, but it's not a P pentomino, so that doesn't work. Actually, no, it goes to the left first this time. This is complicated. Bonds it, finishes the bonds there, and moves it straight to the output, but not quite onto the output zone, so it needs to go over there once more. It does now. The p pentomino moves into the same space again. And then there's a t pentomino up there that gets treated the exact same way as the previous case, but this time it's already in the output zone. Then there's a p pentomino again, followed by a s or mirrored z pentomino that also gets handled the same way. Now for the y pentomino, actually gets grabbed there already and moved over by one, and then handled the same way. And the mirrored L pentomino gets grabbed by blue because it triggers the sensor, which rotates it twice, and then places it back for red to handle it the same way as it handles the other ones. So yeah, we've also seen all of the cases here now. So it's just important that when the first input happens, it goes down right here on the right side. And then I don't think the rest of the actions actually matter. And then for the second input, first of all, it tries to grab and drop there. And then it goes down here. And it needs to go over this twice. But it doesn't really matter how many times it ends up at the top there and going down again. Okay. Finally, there is a fourth reactor, which looks really simple, but is actually the one that was the most confusing to me. Red just sits on an input alpha, and when it gets an input at some point, it hits this sensor right here, which makes it go back up to the input. And blue then just grabs this and moves it to the output zone. And once again, I'm not really sure why the output command is all the way on the left right there. And then for the next input, the same thing happens. And then here, the same thing happens. But this time, blue is actually fast enough to get this off the sensor so that red goes down here and hits input beta. So, yeah. It always needs to go down here to input the beta things. And that is roughly 2 out of 7 things that arrive here. But 40 outputs is also not divisible by 7. So there's not even exactly, it's not a clean ratio. And I don't even know what the exact ratio is and how this works, but somehow this timing works out to get the exact right ratio of input alphas and input betas when it reaches 40 outputs. Yeah, that is one of the GG Goal secrets, how you get this to time in such a way that the output ratio is exactly correct.
I don't think it is correct, but it doesn't make it any less impressive.
I mean, it has to be correct. Wait, why? Is this not the correct number of outputs I have here? I think it was 80, right? Can anyone who actually played this level confirm what the number of outputs was? Yeah, it was 80. So I have the wrong level here. Always great to be a professional. If I change the output number now, that invalidates it. But I think I still want to, yeah, at least get that right. So let me duplicate that. Edit this. So yeah, now that we have the correct level here, we can see that when it reaches 80 outputs, everything has cleared up, the pipes are empty. And the ratio just works. Tufthorpe says that they did have a solution that crashed at the 56th output. So yeah, it's definitely possible to break later. And yeah, I don't know how this timing worked out, but everything that's written here is fourth reactor is simple, merge two streams of outputs into one stream, but getting the timing to work was tricky. The point of the flip-flop at A1 in the third reactor is same as the flip-flop on C8 in reactor 1. Keep the parity of the outputs the same. So the flip-flop right here is to keep the outputs on the same parity of cycles. Even or odd, I'm not sure, something like that. And then this just works out magically. Yeah, I don't have any real insight to add to this. So yeah, the flip-flop right here compensates for a cycle, because when a U or P pentomino gets here,
It's because the rotate is the only thing that disrupts the parity here. So if we ended up disrupted from in that path, if we ended up disrupted from having to rotate, then we have to wait for one cycle again.
So U and P pentominoes go here, and that's...
No, on the other paths, that rotate happens an even amount of times.
Ah, yeah. Oh. Wait.
And now I have no idea why V parity is even important here.
No, I think the point is that for any two inputs, there's an odd number of cycles that this thing takes for some reason. Because U and P go through, like, they don't hit a rotate, so they take an even number of cycles. And everything that's not U or P, so the other input in a pair, it's a rotate here, but no, why do you need a flip-flop then for the V pentomino? This makes no sense to me. So let's read again. The flip-flop at C8 compensates for the one cycle delay the rotate caused, getting the Waldo back onto the even-odd parity it was on before the rotate. If the molecules, one of the others, still need to delay one cycle to compensate for rotating it when it passes through the rotate later, after grabbing at B3, all the other molecules are sent to the omega output zone. Yeah, I don't really get how this fixes the parity, but something breaks without this flip-flop, so I'm sure GGGoal had some genius thought here. I just can't really follow it. I mean, I can post the description for the first reactor here in our live chat. And also put it in the YouTube video later, somewhere in the description or something. You can read that and maybe it makes sense to you. So yeah, anyway, let's move on to the next solution by Zabokar, which is called B2D. This is only a two reactor solution, and I didn't really point out the difference. So Enningmay's solution was 94 symbols, and Team Absolute Zeros is 76 symbols, so that is a drop of 18 symbols, despite being one reactor more, just because the reactors are generally simpler. Now we have a two reactor solution right here, and 64 symbols, so that's a drop of 12 again. And the first reactor is once again a single Waldo reactor. Interesting how that turned out. But then the second reactor is a little bit more complicated. So this one...
because it's strong.
Yeah. The first reactor filters out U and P pentominoes, and the U pentominoes are called V pentominoes here. And then at the bottom it filters out the other V pentominoes and all the others, and just has something there. So how does that work? of course, again with a blind grab right here, which grabs P, U, and V pentominoes. And just dropping P and U there, detecting the V with the sensor, and dropping everything else there. So yeah, the V pentomino triggers the sensor and gets moved down, and everything else just gets grabbed over there and then dropped there, so it just gets shifted right to the output without any rotation or translation within the zone. So this reactor is really straightforward. Doesn't do any bonding, it just does a bit of sorting, but does not even place molecules in particularly advantageous positions, just places them wherever they're easiest to drop. Okay. And then the next reactor is a bit more complicated. I think it's safe to move those and put a pause right there. Actually, let's see if there's any flip-flop priming. There's not. So when both inputs are there, the red Waldo also has a carbon sensor right there, which detects the top input. If it is a P pentomino, and it does not detect U pentominoes, blue grabs the P pentomino, which it detects with this sensor, rotates it around, and then red grabs from here, goes over some sensors to distinguish between cases. So 3 sensors for several cases. Drops it here in the correct location, bonds once, and then blue moves it over and bonds a second time, outputs. And there's another P pentomino, so red triggers again. This time choosing this path. The next time.
So this is really natural. You normalize such that the halves of the output molecule always arrive in different inputs. I mean, in different input areas. Then you can just have blue handle the top one and red handle the bottom one.
Except if the top input is a U pentomino, then blue just handles both of them and red doesn't even go. Because it already sits on top of bonders and blue just bonds there.
Yeah, it's a particularly convenient spot. I think the same also happens here.
Yeah. So this path just handles the U inputs very easily. And for P pentominoes, blue just places them over there, and then red handles the other input and places it in the correct location using these 3 sensors to distinguish between 5 different cases. So 2 of them have to get treated the same way, actually. So yeah, the S or mirrored Z pentomino and the T pentomino both get handled the same way. So the T would have another carbon atom here instead of down here, but they can just be handled the same way. And that's already all the cases. So yeah, this is a really simple first reactor, and considering what it does, also a rather simple second reactor. Like, this has basically all the logic in it other than separating the pairs. And really nice in 64 symbols. And it also takes 7,154 cycles, making it the fastest solution out of the ones I've run here, and I've run all of them so far. Okay, so the next solution is by Sir, and it's typical group project. And yeah, here we get into the one reactor solutions. So you have a group of 12 reactors and only one reactor does all the work, or something like that, is how I interpret the name. And why do work over 2 reactors when you can just do everything in 1 reactor? When I initially came up with this puzzle without thinking it through too much, I did not expect there to be 1 or even 2 reactor solutions. I just gave people many reactors and thought however many they need, they have them. But yeah, after thinking about how you can treat many cases in a similar way, became obvious that you don't actually need that many reactors, but still doing it in 1 reactor is really impressive. So how does it work? Yeah, there is a sink there. Then red inputs. This time there are grabs there, there, and there. So those are locations we haven't really seen like that before. Blue grabs this p pentomino, detects that there is another atom below, and brings it over here. Okay. Then the next gets grabbed by red, which detects that there's an atom above, and it brings it over there. And now that there is a molecule here and a molecule here, this flip-flop sends blue to handle those and bond them together, bonding it there, and then already dropping and outputting and shifting it over by 1 and outputting again. Next, there is a T, which also gets grabbed by blue, but this time, yeah, moved up there. And the P, which we've seen before. And those already look like they line up quite nicely. So bond there, and that's it. Then the U gets grabbed by red actually, but sent down here because there is nothing above. So the U and the P pentominoes always end up down here, while the other pentominoes end up in this general area. And then they already get placed in such a way that blue can just grab the bottom one, bring it to the top, and bond it together no matter what they are. And yeah, then the 3x3 is either here and it outputs it immediately, 1 to the left where it outputs it immediately, or even further to the left where it then gets grabbed and dropped over there, so just shifted 1 to the right. Okay, that are the two cases with the U pentomino. And the P pentomino is one further to the left here, because as you can maybe see, it shares these three atoms with the U pentomino, which would sit right here. So they can get treated kind of mostly the same way, and you just attach something in this general area at the top here. Which happens there, and then all of these bonds along the diagonal get fixed using these 4 bonders, and also this one maybe. Yeah, you have to be a bit careful with your bonder placement in this level, because you're not allowed to remove any bonds, not even the ones that you make yourself. Rukios is asking if bonders 14 and 15 ever do anything. Yes, they do. So apparently it is the UF case, so this one right here. There they do something. Also UY. So whenever there is the U pentomino, these two bonders fire, and when there is the P pentomino on the left here, then those fire. And then all of these down here get used for the remaining bonds. And that is how you make a single reactor solution with 48 symbols. Even faster than the previous solution. So yeah, this is already really impressive, and we've still got a few places to go. Like, there's not even much to talk about. It just handles all of the cases in a pretty straightforward way, without too much unnecessary pathing, and just normalizes it into one molecule up here, one molecule down there, moves the bottom one up, creates like 1 or 2 bonds, moves it a little down, creates the missing bonds, and then outputs it. Okay, so
it's a little bit unfortunate that sometimes the resulting molecule is one child to the left of where it should be. So you have to do this grab drop circuit on E2H2.
Yeah, so that's 3 extra symbols right here. But yeah, with the way this normalization happens, where the U and P pentomino can even be basically treated the same way, you end up with outputs that are 5 wide, and you only have a 4 wide output zone, so you need to do something about that. And 3 symbols isn't too bad. Okay. In next place, which is already the 3rd place, we have Kurokwre, which is a team consisting of Brokios and Davichi. It's called 2420 copy, which refers to the number of symbols on the 2 Waldo, because in total there are 44 symbols, and they are split pretty evenly between the 2 Waldos, so I think 2420 makes sense. So maybe I should actually check that that's correct. Yeah, that's 20 on blue and 24 on red. So what does this one do? There's only a single reactor. And yeah, okay, let's just let it run. Red Waldo input something. There's a blind grab up there, which doesn't do anything. And then a blind grab there for the P pentomino, which it places over there. And then the blue Waldo advances by 1 sync. So red does all of the moving inputs from the input zone to their respective locations where they're convenient to handle. And then blue does the handling. Okay, so for the V pentomino, the sensor triggers, which is also the only use of this sensor, just to detect the V pentomino. And it gets moved over there. And now that the sync has been hit another time, blue knows that there are 2 pentominos right here. It grabs the P pentomino over there and rotates it, drops it, and then there's this P pentomino here. Alternatively, there could also be a U pentomino, which would be in this shape, so it does the exact same normalization we've seen before. And then it brings it up there, creates some bonds, and brings it down there to fix the bonds that are still missing. It also does a bounce back with another grab drop, but this time it's only 2 extra symbols, so this grab and this flip-flop, because the drop is already needed just to drop on the output zone.
Yeah, it suffers from the same issue, that normalization scheme.
Yeah. So meanwhile, red already grabbed a T pentomino, rotated it once and placed it over there. And yeah, then it grabs the P pentomino. Actually quite convenient how you can grab the P and the U pentomino down there and everything else up there. And it basically just does the splitting them into the 2 things, and the only problem is the V pentomino, which is sitting like this, so you need a sensor to separate that. I didn't really do that intentionally, I just put them into the input zone in a way that they looked nice. Yeah, the U pentomino also gets grabbed down there.
It is a miracle how the same volume path always does do the correct ones and never does the incorrect ones.
I mean, yeah, you can imagine there's this U pentomino which needs a bond here, a bond here, a bond here, and a bond here. And for the P pentomino, which would be one further to the left, you either need a bond here, a bond here, a bond here, and a bond here, or bond here, bond here, bond here, and bond here, I think. And
so mostly speaking about bonders 9, 10, and 12.
Yeah. So it starts by doing these 1, 2, 3, 4 bonds, actually 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bonds right here that are all needed for the U pentomino. And then it does extra bonds right here I'm kind of wondering what those bonders are for right now, and I'm sure we'll see that soon. Okay, those two are for P plus V, Brokios says. So it starts making those 3 bonds. And then there's just 1 bond missing for the case of having the P pentomino and something like that. Those annotations show how the molecules are sitting at the top there. So please wait. So this would be the T and mirrored Z pentomino. This right here would be, well, kind of the L or mirrored L pentomino, but that now is different. So that's not correct anymore. Would also indicate the F pentomino and the Y pentomino here. And this is the V pentomino. Yeah. So Mg is 12 and argon is 18, just to show that there are overlapping carbons in these annotations. Okay, now I just want to see the V case again, and that is one of the earlier inputs. So let's see that again. That's actually the first one. So that gets placed right there. Similarly, how the L pentomino sits right here. No, actually it sits like this, right? This would make sense for the L pentomino. And then it creates, this is where the bonders are used, those bonds, and then these bonds. Yeah, really nice how all of that fits together. Slightly slower than the solutions before, but 44 symbols is a drop of 4 symbols from the previous solution. Good job, Kurokwe. Now we can move on to the second place solution, which is by Big Mango Head. More arrangements version 12. It also only uses 1 reactor and 43 symbols, so 1 symbol fewer than the one before. Okay, so it is inputting the bottom input. And here we have these 2 flip-flops going to the right and doing blind grabs, like we had the flip-flops at the top and doing blind grabs before in, was it Team Absolute Zero's solution? Yeah, I think so. So it grabs the p pentomino in the top position here and detects that there's another carbon, so it sends it up and drops it right there. And it hits another input, goes to the top again, doesn't grab anything this time, and instead grabs from there, where it doesn't grab anything. Now it's trying the top again, just to be sure, and then this one. And yeah, also blue is having these two carbon sensors that are on the walls to count two inputs, because the inputs move over the sensor at some point by the way they're handled. So there are no sinks necessary, and blue just knows when the second molecule is arriving. But this also makes the timing between the two Waldos a bit of a pain in the solution, and there are some extra arrows Big Mango had said that are only necessary for timing, and also like this flip-flop up here looks like it's just for timing. So this one is still being moved in place by red. Meanwhile, blue is already carrying the p pentomino across. So this timing is already rather tight. And then it bonds once, brings it over these bonders, bonds again, shifts it down, and outputs. A bit unfortunate that you need two output symbols here. Yeah, the T pentomino can only be grabbed here, triggering the blue. And those just fit together like that. And then there's extra bonds to add in those places. It's really nice how that just lands on the bonders where it needs to. And this is also already doing the like normalization back into a 4 white thing, so it needs to double back and do these grab drops for fixing bonds and for moving things to the output zone, so it's not doing those separately like previous solutions that first fixed all the bonds and then had to do a bounce back to move things back into the output zone if they were sticking out. Yeah, and then just fits together really nicely right here. Okay, Big Mango Head says first of all, he also has a 44 symbol solution with sinks. So using the sensors and timing the walls together doesn't really gain that much, only one symbol. And also a 42 symbol solution that doesn't quite reach 80 inputs because red gets stuck input stalling. Also the bounce back with the other solutions is probably better because the flip-flop at H7 pointed up. It would have 2 less arrows, but I couldn't make this work because the bonders are kind of squashed on the right and there is not much space. Yeah. So it's basically just to avoid this grab when going up. Because you need to hit the bond the bond plus first and then grab down there. Yeah, it only
Does
uses...
it help if you...
What did you say?
Oh, you have to hit it at the second time. Never mind.
Yeah, there's only one bond plus command, but it gets hit twice for several outputs. Yeah, the 42 symbol solution outputs 79 out of 80 outputs. Brokios says, I assume blue can't go back to A3. So right here, to redirect, because red's too fast and it would grab in a partial P. Yeah, you can't move this arrow all the way to the left because then blue is too slow and also misses this carbon sensor here sometimes. Blue can't really be any slower to be on this carbon sensor in time for when red is fast. Okay. At 18,000 cycles, this is the slowest solution, but it's also the lowest symbol solution we've seen so far. Yeah, that was actually correct. So let's move on to the best solution we have, which is by Alliterative Allies, which is a team consisting of Tough Thought and Britboy. And it's called One Reactor. And it only has 38 symbols by using a loopback pipe, which nobody else has done. Big Mango Head wrote about considering that at some point, but did not actually come up with a solution that makes use of that. And also, it looks really nice already how blue is just one rectangle here and red is basically contained in that. It sticks out ever so slightly here, but yeah, it also is visually pleasing.
Rectangle size.
Yeah. We'll get some rectangle size. When is it? Next week already? Okay, so let's move this input down a bit, put a pause there. So blind grab here, blind grab there, and a blind grab over there. So the P pentomino does not grab there. Does get grabbed here and brought over to this loopback pipe, which sends the P pentomino and the U pentomino over here. And then the V pentomino already gets grabbed there. This one actually has another atom there to grab, so it does not get output. So this doesn't need a sensor to distinguish the V pentomino from the U and P. It uses the shape instead with a blind grab over there. And then places it on the sensor to indicate to blue that there is a molecule here. And then blue hits the input. So when there is something to sense there and an input there, then there's two molecules. So blue can start putting them together with these bonds and then those bonds, and then just drop output. And there's also a bounce back here to grab and drop it down lower. So this did turn out to be the best way of handling that. Next input is a T pentomino, which only gets grabbed here. Does not get sensed. And then it goes back over this path, re-grabbing it and rotating it. And I don't even know what's going on here. It just ends up here in a convenient place at some point. Yeah, it handles the input order because blue can only advance once it detects one molecule here and can input the other molecule here, so there are both molecules from the pair. Then the U gets placed right there. F only gets grabbed over there. This actually gets sensed there and then there and gets brought down there like that. Fitting together with the U immediately. The Y also gets grabbed right there. Also hitting these sensors. So it gets treated the same as the F pentomino, which does make sense, I think. And then it just fits together with the U pentomino quite nicely. Now the S or mirrored Z pentomino up there also gets grabbed there. But it does not get sensed over there, so it goes through this loop up there again. Placing it right here. This is also the perfect cycle. It could not be one cycle slower. Now the Y together with a P. We've already seen the Y getting handled or being put together with a U right here. And the P is just one higher, so they get treated basically the same again as we've seen in the previous solutions. Just fixing the bonds with the two separate bond pluses. And yeah, then it does the normalization into the output zone size with this bounce back. And for the final pair, there's this L pentomino, which just ends up right there. And then the P pentomino. And they fit together like that and get output. Really nice. Congratulations on finding such a clean solution with so few symbols. So 14,816 cycles.
Why is it that you cannot combine the shield by one circuit with the drop. So there are two separate drops on blue.
Nope. So this is how I would do that, and it doesn't work, and also doesn't save a symbol.
No, go.
Okay, what do you want?
Move the I6 arrow to Oh, yeah, because it's not forward anymore. Never mind. Is the wrong place to normalize, I think.
Yeah, so the output symbol also needs to get triggered before it grabs. I don't think there's a better way of doing this. But I do wonder why you can't, for example, do that. I'm sure there's a reason. Yes, it crashes. Okay. You also can't do that. Okay. So
there's a case where red and blue are cycle-aligned.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, this is probably the top solution for a reason, and they did try to optimize for such low-hanging optimizations. So there is probably no point in trying around anymore right now. Congratulations on this great solution, and we have 3 more fun solutions. First one is by Kurokwe, single Waldo 48. So 48 symbols, which would have placed very close to Ser. So somewhere around 4th place. And single Waldo, single reactor. So yeah, Brokios just took the solution and made it 1 Waldo. Yeah, there is a flip-flop on J5 right here, where red detects that it has handled 2 inputs, and then it goes into the loop that blue used to do in the 2 Waldo solution. And yeah, some of the pathing has changed a bit to fit together, but other than that, it's just doing the same thing that 2 Waldos did with 1 Waldo, which is something I really like. So yeah, nice solution, nothing too spectacular, and it works. Next, we have alliterative allies with a one-Waldo solution. This one has the feedback pipe and 39 symbols, so only one more symbol than the winning solution, proving once again that you really don't need more than one Waldo to make good solutions to some puzzles. Yeah, this is Yellow Bunny propaganda. And this is once again just quite similar to the scoring solution, just doing it with one Waldo now.
And for some reason, it doesn't suffer from the input order problem.
I mean, yeah, it places one input in this location and puts the other one into the feedback pipe, and then once the two inputs have been placed somewhere, the sensor triggers. I don't know which one. Not that sensor. This sensor right here. Yeah, the sensor which inputs.
It's simply no, never mind. I don't get it.
So whenever it reaches here, one pentomino has been placed in a convenient location and the other one is in the loopback pipe, and then it just inputs from the pipe and bonds them together the same way that the blue Waldo used to do that. That was input stalling.
Oh, nice. So this is the other way to normalize for. So this is the other way to convert 5 wide to 4 wide. The flip-flop one, G1.
Yeah. This was kind of what I was trying, but didn't quite manage to do when I was playing around with the scoring solution. So Tough Thought points out that these two sensors right here with the rotate in between are quite important. So that's something we also saw in the scoring solution that sorts 5 different molecules into 3 categories. So one category is just it doesn't sense anything, it goes straight up. One category is it goes through once, then senses that, goes back, senses and goes down, and I'm not quite sure what the third category is. I haven't seen that yet. So the F pentomino is one of those that bounces back over the rotate and then goes down here. And okay, the L pentomino immediately triggers this first sensor and goes straight down. Okay, do we have an L pentomino somewhere? I still have this pause. So the L pentomino just gets sent straight down into this location without ever going to the left and rotating at all. And then the P pentomino gets moved over there. Bonded together, bonded, and that's it. Nice. Now imagine if you could save 1 or 2 more symbols on this one. Wouldn't that be cool? Okay. I didn't run this to completion. Also really nice cycle count at 14444. And finally, there is a 1 Waldo no sensor solve by Sir, which is also 1 reactor. So let's see how we can solve this without the sensor. Brokius points out that he should have delayed the 1 Waldo solve by 3 cycles to make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cycles. Yeah, that's definitely a missed opportunity there. But you also shouldn't like intentionally slow down your solutions to hit interesting numbers. Just, I don't know, whatever. So there is a first input finally. And there are...
I don't see any issues with that if it's non-scoring.
Yeah, I mean, for non-scoring solutions, do whatever you want, really. But if you have like a flip-flop counter at the beginning of your solution just to reach a different cycle number, that's maybe not the most interesting thing. But if it's a few cycles here or there, that can be fine. Just if it becomes too obvious, it might influence your fun points. So the P pentomino gets moved over there using all of these. How many blind grabs are there? 5 of them. And lots of flip-flops everywhere and lots of rotates everywhere, of course. And it gets moved over here and moved over there.
The yes kind of transformations.
Yeah, just a lot of flip-flops, lots of blind grabs and drops everywhere, and some rotates in between. And then it just works. Basically the most insightful commentary I have on this right now. So that just gets put together like that. And eventually it hits a bond plus here. There's a 3-count flip-flop over there. It grabs, bonds, normalizes here, and outputs. So this is a slightly different normalization due to the constraints imposed by the challenge here. So the T pentomino gets grabbed up there and dropped all over the place to land there. And then the P pentomino gets grabbed there and then placed over there. So it's also important that the P or U pentomino comes from the right side, because there might be something on the left side already. And the other molecule comes from the left side. So there aren't any collisions in this region right here where one molecule might already be sitting. Yeah, it's no idea how you managed to get all of this in. So So this is the same idea for the normalization. The U pentomino is up here, the P pentomino would be one lower, and then you just need to bond something to the left of that. So it's really quite easy, actually, if you think about it. Just need to put everything in the right place first. There's one bond there, then all of these bonds, and then it gets moved to the output like that. And after outputting, it runs through this path again, and that's why there's a 3-count flip-flop. So it counts the 2 inputs, and then the Waldo just happens to run through there once more to get back to the left side.
It's also why the flip-flops at A4 and A6 are structured the way they are.
So these flip-flops on A4 and A6 are so that when the Waldo comes there the first time, it just goes straight down. And the second time when it comes there, it bounces back up, drops something there potentially. Yeah.
I would say it's so that we consider all possible input molecule permutation before trying to input the next one.
Yeah.
So if there was no A6, then
do you mean A5? Or?
I mean, it's the most compact way to not go into the bottom path, unless we have to for the next molecule.
Yeah.
So I think there could be more. I think it doesn't hurt to go to the top more. Because it's idempotent.
And then, of course, you have all of these paths going up, down, left, and right, and crossing here with some rotates, and then you need to have more rotates to fix the wrong rotates. Yeah. So the thing that gets grabbed there, what is that actually? Is there any place where we can put a somewhat convenient pause here? Maybe right. No, not there. Oh, that's horrible.
The A5 grab.
So this one right here. Yeah. This grab only triggers later, so the V pentomino gets grabbed there. And that's,
I think it's for V.
Yeah. The T already gets grabbed there. The F gets grabbed there. The Y gets grabbed there. So Y, T, and F are all here. V is there. S or Z is also there. And then these right here are for P and U, I think. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so congratulations on also getting this to work. Can imagine this was not that easy to make. Think 1 Waldo, 1 reactor, no sensor definitely receives a full fun point. And then we have 2 1 Waldo solutions, which are just quite similar to the scoring solutions. Does anyone have a suggestion how much that is worth?
Since one of the solutions use only half of the reactor, as in they use only half of the voltages. I think it's fair to give them half points.
Yeah. So literally allies, you get half a point, and then Squawk or Brochios.
I like Source one.
Yeah, Source one gets the full point. Like doing no sensor and all of this is really impressive. Yeah, and then yeah, half a point for the other 2. They both put in similar amounts of effort and alliterative allies just started off with a better solution to turn into single Waldo. I think that point is fair. So yeah, you get half a point, half a fun point each, and Sir gets a full fun point. And with that, we have discussed all the solutions. There is no host solution because yeah, we never really got around to solving this.
Well, you didn't have said anything. There is no host solution because there is no host solution.
Yeah, I wanted to make one in the last week, but then I was sick for some days and just busy with work, and it was too hot, and I needed to finalize the round that started yesterday. And yeah, there were several single Waldo solutions submitted already. So I have all the excuses, and let's move on to announcing the thing that already started yesterday. So not really announcing it, but just showing it on the video. And it is Elements of Atropos, which is basically just 5 levels taken straight from the campaign, namely on Atropos Station. All of those used to be single reactor, so research levels. And now they have crash landed on Sikutar and are spread all over the surface of Sikutar. And you need to solve all those levels right here simultaneously. And yeah, the metric for that is unique Waldos, mostly. And not unique Waldos, unique reactors.
Unique reactors.
Yeah. Unique Waldos is not a metric that exists at the moment. Unique reactors, so For reactors, the placement of all the symbols and all of the features, so bonders, fusion, laser, and sensor, matter. So this reactor right here is different from this reactor up here. But if I just copy this, which you can by dragging with Control click, then these reactors are the same, even if they have different pipes. So this only has 2 unique reactors. So this is a unique one, and this is a unique one, and this one up here is just a copy of that. And yeah, then
So make sure, if you normalize them by hand, make sure the boundary priorities are also set in the same way.
Yeah. So you can make sure that they are absolutely the same by holding Control and then copying them like that. Now these are definitely the same reactor as far as the metric is concerned.
So for a little bit of history, when I first started playing SpaceChem, it occurred to me that almost every production puzzle, which gave you a lot of reactors to work with, could actually be solved with just one reactor. And I think the first campaign level where it's noticeable was in-place swap, the optional level in World 3. But there are levels where input or output constraints are such that it's not possible to solve a puzzle with just one reactor. Amazingly, the World 5, either World 5 or World 6 defense level with the big laser is also playable with one reactor. But there are levels where it's not possible simply because you have too much inputs to handle, or too many inputs to handle, or too many outputs to handle. But even then, you can try to solve them with essentially one reactor. So what does essentially one reactor mean? It means that even though there are multiple reactors on the level, they all share the same program and feature placement. In essence, it's like making a polyglot solution that works when there are multiple, that works with multiple puzzles that it can solve. So Yellow Bunny had an idea. What if we could solve all of arthropods with one polyglot solution? And here's what he came up with.
So yeah, I admit that this level looks a bit convoluted like this. With all of these annotations, you can get rid of some of them by just running the level. But what's really important to notice is that there are 4 quadrants that are completely cut off from each other, and you can look at those individually. And then this one is just one campaign puzzle, this is one campaign puzzle, this is one campaign puzzle, and the bottom left is actually 2 campaign puzzles. So you can maybe also just place a reactor, find out where that connects, and then look at it like this and not get confused by all of these annotations right here, but just have it like this. Or you can go back to the campaign and look at how the levels look like there. You can go to the level editor and get rid of more annotations. There are many ways how you can look at this and have it be slightly less confusing. And once you play with this level for a bit, you also just get used to it. At least I did when I made a solution to this. So it's really not that bad after you get used to this. Okay, I wasn't quite done talking about the metric. So it's mostly unique reactors. So that gets multiplied by 7 because it is the 7th round. And there are 7 outputs, I think, and all outputs need 77 things. Maybe also for other reasons. And the next thing in the metric is Waldos. So you need to also not use too many Waldos, and a Waldo gets counted as soon as there is any non-start symbol. So currently this is a 0 Waldo solution, and now it would be a 1 Waldo solution, and now it would be a 2 Waldo solution. I hope that makes sense. And that is basically everything for this level. And with that, I would say we are done for today's stream. So I'm going to end the recording now. Bye.